Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwellynn Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I've got an incredible guest with us today. Hey, O'Neill, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. You've done a ton, but can't wait for us to kind of jump into it. For our listeners who don't know who you are, can you kind of tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you've been doing, and kind of what you've been up to lately?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Neil Timmins. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. So right in the heartland of this country. And I got into the business as a traditional realtor. Have been in that or had been in that business for literally years and years and years and years. It took me a long time, way too long to transition into the investor side of things. And we do it all. We're in a tertiary market. So that means we make dollars and cents out of every lead we can possibly get. A lot of fixing and flipping. That's been our bread and butter. Number buy and hold. We wholesale, and then we still have a brokerage, although I don't operate as a realtor anymore. I am the broker, and I've got I brought a gal on last year, Ashley, who does a terrific job. She handles all of our stuff on the realtor side of things.
Thank you so much for that. There's a
Yeah,
bunch for us to talk about. You wrote a book as well. We'll get to that at the end. One thing
yeah,
that did pop to my mind was, I used to work with a lot of residential agents.
yep,
Now I just work with, commercial brokers on, because we buy apartments. But
exactly.
I remember when I meet with agents, I'm always wondering like why they're not doing, what I'm doing. That question
Right,
just was always there at the back of my mind. So I want to ask
right.
you, like, what made you move from that just being an agent to actually being an investor? Can you kind of just talk us through the story of how you got started?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when I was 29 years old, I became the number one agent in the state of Iowa in the REMAX system. I had my own office, had a small team, sold 211 homes that year as a realtor. And I got to that point, obviously, I get to that point, I was making some pretty good money. And shortly thereafter, I was like, you know what, it's time to start putting some of this to work. And the stock market really is kind of a scary place in my eyes. There's not a tremendous amount of control there, as you well know. And so the ability to put your money into real estate, something tangible, something you can, choose what you pay for it, choose how to remodel it, choose how to sell it. There's so much control in that control. What has been rewarded to me over our course of buying lots of properties has been, a return on investment that doesn't even touch the stock market, and also at a reduced risk level. So it did take me a long time. You're right, to just like a lot of realtors who are in that, who are successful, who also never make that next, they don't go to a different level. They know their business. They're really good at that, but they just don't have, I don't know if what it takes, or it's not an aspiration of theirs to enter the investment side. But for me, what I realized is that I was gonna be working forever as a realtor, because a realtor business is, in my mind, almost worth zero without you there, or the person there. Nothing happens. You can try to put a team in place. It's just not quite the same without that person leading the charge. So to have that passive income, to be able to go down that path, and I've got a bunch of single family homes, bought apartments, much like you, have bought commercial assets. That has been a bigger move for us in the last year or so. And it's been and each time you buy something, you learn something, and then it expands your capacity to do more. And so that's what single families were, the entry point, and now it's progressed to larger assets.
Yeah, before I ask you what is your favorite strategy, since you've done a bunch and you've obviously sold a ton of homes for you to be number one,
Yeah,
in your market. So
yeah.
basically, so what was that first, if there's an agent listening to this, or maybe just
Yeah.
somebody that's looking to get started, what was that deal that actually got your feet in the door? Like, how did you actually make that transition? So maybe tell us, the story. I think you partnered with an investor. So just kind of tell us that deal, how you found that deal, how you funded it, how you actually got involved in the beginning.
Yep. So in the beginning, I flipped that was my first entry point into that of an investor. Flipped a property at that time. We're going back probably 10 years at this point. At that point, I was out showing homes to a client. They were buying some stuff, and they passed on a home, and I thought it was a pretty good deal. And so literally I just bought it. Now, obviously the MLS in our world looks very different today in today's market than 10 years ago, which was, which was quite a bit different, right? So there were opportunities out there. So I bought it, went in, got introduced to a contractor, had him do the thing. And that became an interesting piece, and probably the most complex piece in my mind. If you can identify a deal, understand what it's going to take to rehab, and then, it's really the more complex piece is the execution of the business model. How do you go and manage that contractor? Do you have good relationships? And that's something I really focused on over the last 4 or 5 years, to make sure that we really have tremendous relationships with our contractors. But to go back to your question, I was in a privileged position in the first deal. I mean, I paid cash for the thing. I paid cash for the remodel, coming off of being a realtor and being frugal with my money. I had cash resources to be able to do that. So went in, did it, invested in it. But I remember this. It's probably, I've done hundreds at this point of fix and flips. But so I can probably count on one hand the number of noisy neighbors, just the squeaky wheel, if you will. And I remember the neighbor at this place was like the worst. He was the most annoying person ever. He was always concerned about weeds in the yard or in the corner of the fence. And he would come over. I'd literally hear stories from the agents who would go show the home about how the neighbor showed up and talked to him about everything for 15 minutes. So we had to navigate that a little bit, but eventually got it done, got it sold, made a profit. And then that was the entry point. And you're going, all right, cool. Well, I don't remember the exact number, but it was probably 10 to 12,000 bucks, somewhere in that kind of range. And I was going, well, that was relatively easy. And it was way more in control than the ability to make $10,000 or $12,000 as a realtor. Felt like really labor intensive.
So what did you do next? Because you were like, okay, this is not bad. I made like 10, 20, 10.
Yeah.
So what
then
was your next foray?
The next foray, it took me a while. Then we started doing a few more. Every so often, I would just buy stuff out of the MLS. That's it. I'd buy things off the MLS. Anytime I was out, anytime I see something that was interesting, cool, let's buy another one. And let's keep going. So I bought a few. And then it took a while until I was like, you know what, let's buy a rental property. I was having lunch with a friend of mine who's a realtor. I actually got him into this industry as an agent. So we were having lunch and he said, you know what, I got a property coming up, great area, needs a ton of work. Probably a better rental property than a rehab. The numbers are not likely to work on a rehab basis on the exit closing cost primarily. And so I said, well, cool. Let me look at it. He gave me the deal, and I was able to see it before it went on the market for sale. So went over, saw it the day it came for sale, wrote a full price offer and bought the thing. And that was 5 years and 3 months ago from right now. So just a little over 5 years. It was my first rental property. I still own the property today. It's a tremendous property. Cash flows extraordinarily well. And then from that one, I bought the house next door, met the neighbor on that one. They were an older couple, ended up needed to go to an assisted facility. So bought that one. And then it just snowballed. I was like, cool, well, this is buying these rentals, and it's a solid B neighborhood. So I manage that property myself. Even to this day, I manage it because it's not very straining on what I do. Our C properties, we third party manager that. It's a little more
smart
moving pieces.
Yeah. Smart. So you did some flips and then rentals, and then they got to a point where you thought, well, I want to go a little bit bigger into commercial, right? And as you know, these are two totally different worlds, right?
Correct.
I remember when I was getting started in commercial, like the brokers did not care if I flipped the house or bought a rent. Like, it's just totally different, right?
Correct.
So how did you make that transition into commercial?
Good question.
What did you actually buy?
Yep, absolutely. I'll give you the setup here. So moving through the single family space, I finally made a decision to let's go do this full time. Started winding down my realtor business, started gearing up, hiring, eventually hiring people on our fix and flip side. Now on that world, we do about 75 to 100 transactions a year between fix and flip, buy and hold, novations, everything in that space. That's what we're doing today. And then, you know, you start making money, you're going to go, how can I employ these dollars and cents? Right. So, you know, I bought an 8-plex along the way, I bought a 4-plex along the way. So started buying bigger assets and rolling these dollars up, because there's only so much money you can make off a $90,000 house versus a, you know, $900,000 or $2-3 million building. So my brother came to me at one point. I've got 3 brothers. My youngest came to me at one point. He was an attorney. He was probably 3 years into the business. And he goes, dude, I'm done being an attorney. I want to do something else. I'm thinking about getting into real estate. And he's like, what would you recommend? I'm thinking about becoming a realtor like you. I said, well, that's a terrible idea. I said, I don't think you would enjoy. I know your personality. You're coming from an attorney world. I said, you're more thoughtful, more methodical. I said, I think I would explore the commercial real estate world. Let me buy you a book. So I bought him my favorite book on commercial real estate, sent it to him. 4 days later, he was like, I'm becoming a commercial realtor. And so now he's a few years into this as a commercial realtor. And as you can imagine, he's my brother. The first call he makes when he gets a deal that might be something of interest, he calls his older brother. Right. And so that was my first buy. He sent me, trying to remember which one. And I bought a bakery. That is my first transaction, as I bought a bakery, which is the bakery for the largest grocer in the state. It's also the largest employer of the state. They bake, it's a 17,000 square foot building. They bake all their tremendous amount of goods out of here and then ship them off to their various grocery stores.
Fantastic. So wait, you bought the bakery or the building that the bakery is in?
You're right. I bought the building that the bakery is in.
Gotcha. Also, the book.
You.
Yeah, the book, the commercial book that you recommended to your brother. What's that book, if you can remember?
Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur.
Confession of Real Estate.
I don't recall who wrote it. So you know, Amazon it, if you will. But what a tremendous book, tremendous story. Really, really will. It's a very good book. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely would do that. Okay, so you kind of bought a, I guess, industrial building, right?
Industrial, yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah, manufacturing, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were like, oh, this is really cool. And then, you know, what did you do after that? I'm just trying to build this up.
Yep. After that, like literally the same year, not that long after that, I bought a retail building. It's got about, I'm ballparking, say 12 tenants. It's 2 buildings right next to each other. It's a neighborhood retail strip center. It's in the path of progress. The building is like a C minus in a B location. Nice. So the long-term plan there is that the buildings will be scraped and a new building will be erected. My neighbor next door, they ended up buying, a developer bought 3 parcels of ground. I say parcels, these are tiny pieces. There might be an acre between all 3. They just sold it for $1 million not that long ago. In fact, the grocer that I just mentioned bought the ground. They're putting up a convenience store. They've got a new branding on their convenience store side that they just are in the process of building right now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's kind of get into the book, and then I'll talk about Real Greats as well, your podcast. So why did you write this book?
Yeah, so I wrote this book, you know, if I think about and give thought to, and I'm part of a whole bunch of groups, probably much like you, good across the country. The number one biggest issue I see in our industry and other people like us experience is their ability to hire is very challenging. And, you know, we are also in an environment on the backside of COVID, hiring looks very different, and work and offices versus remote work looks very different. And so we found ourselves in a position where you know, I was in my business and we're scaling. And so how do we go through and how do we hire? How do we navigate what we were in? We found ourselves very challenged hiring here locally. And so I had to make a pivot to go, how do we get salespeople and really critical staff? How do we get them virtually? And I say virtually, when I say that, I mean in the US based employees. And so how do we do that? Because for me, I want I want the absolute best talent for the dollars that I'm going to spend. And I don't care if they're here in town, if the job doesn't require it, which most jobs don't. I don't care if they're here in town in my backyard, or, if they're wherever you happen to be, any part in this country, it doesn't matter to me. I want the best. And that's what we're able to do. And that's what had me write the book. And it's, let me show you. I got the book right here. Unicorn Hunting for Real Estate Investment Companies, how to easily attract, screen, and land a unicorn. It's a complete hiring funnel. So when I say it's a complete hiring funnel, this book is really more of a step-by-step guide, because 80% of it's laid out like a standard operating procedure. What to do, how to do it. It's written in such a way that, probably 80 or 90% could be outsourced to somebody else in your office, or a virtual assistant if you've got one. And it allows you to methodically bring people in, how to screen them. It's a step-by-step approach written by somebody in this industry, been here for a long time, for other people in our industry. So it's unlike a lot of books that I've had to digest in order to even figure out how to hire, that most of the time they left me confused, or, without an exact tangible plan about, okay, it's a great book. Now, what do I actually do? This book actually tells you exactly what to do, because it's exactly what we do.
So The Real Grit, your podcast is coming up.
Yeah.
That's fun. Tell us a little bit about it and when it's going to be coming out, so maybe folks can, plug into that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we just actually dropped the first 3 or 4 episodes in the last 7 days. So it's out now. You can find it on everywhere podcasts can be found. And, what I do is dive in there and talk about, for anybody who's been in this business period of time, much like you, it's not all roses, is it? There's some bumps and some bruises and learning curves along the way. And that's what we get into on The Real Grit, is to talk about what's that look like. A lot of the listeners there are fix and flippers. The goal being, whether you wholesale or whether you fix and flip, the idea being to generate a really good large revenue there, net income, and then be able to eventually deploy that into rental properties, to apartments, to commercial buildings, whatever your, let's call it, forever cash strategy is. And so we talk about what that's like there. And in the heavy in the fix and flip world, bringing people through that, as you alluded to, I partner with other fix and flippers. And so we get very heavy into that.
Fantastic. No, I really appreciate that. Well, we could keep going, but we definitely dwelling into the quick round. Is that going to be quick questions, quick answers? You ready, sir?
Love it. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First question. What makes you unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
2 things. I'm obsessed with real estate. I absolutely love this. So your question is, most people don't somehow morph out of, selling houses as a realtor, and I've sold thousands, to, buying commercial real estate. It just generally doesn't happen. But I'm just obsessed. I'm obsessed with real estate. I'm obsessed with learning. I love it. I've got a passion for it. That, and then the second one is, I care, and my intent is to make a deep personal impact in people's lives. So I love partnering with people. I love bringing people along for the ride and doing it together, because it's, when you do it yourself, it's lonely at the top. When you do it with others, there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of things to celebrate with others along the way.
Awesome. What was the last book that you read, and what was the one thing that you picked up from that book?
Oh, good question. I'm currently reading the Bible. Let me see if I can find the name for you. It's something like the Commercial Bible to Real Estate. I'm going to see if I can get the exact name. It is an excellent book, and it's huge. It's like 500 pages. I think I'm 350 into it. Yeah. So, what's my biggest takeaway so far is it touches on all aspects of commercial real estate. So heavy in apartments, because the person who wrote it is heavy into finance of apartments. I think that's his business. So it talks about very heavy about apartments, and then into all the other aspects of commercial real estate. I think my big takeaway is when he goes into deep detail relative to developing, so land development, whether that be for whatever purposes, doesn't matter, whatever the intended outcome is, that I read that and got a really deep understanding about what it would take to be a developer, and enough to know that I never want to do it.
You're a wise man. Final question. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? I travel. I do two things. I travel and I hunt. So I go on an annual hunt with my college buddies every year. We just do it once a year in the fall, and it's great to be able to get together with guys. But other than that, I travel about every other month. I'm someplace in this country. Yeah, someplace beautiful. Often involving hiking. I love hiking.
Fantastic. So if there's anybody listening to this, Neil, and thinking, wow, I really want to get connected with Neil, what is the best place people can reach out, get to know you better?
Great question. I'm gonna give you two things for your audience. Relative to the book, this retails on Amazon for $49.95, but for your audience, I want to do something special. So, I'll give the book away. Just pay the shipping and handling. You guys can go to landaunicorn.com, landaunicorn.com. And then from there, you want to reach it, you want to learn a little more about me or how we partner with fix and flippers, bringing money to deals and financing and partnering along the way. You can check that out at legacyimpactpartners.com, legacyimpactpartners.com.
Neil, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Hey,
really appreciate it.
Thanks a ton. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you. Thank you.